Chapter 21. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When it came to a man's pride, Shunsui Kairaku quickly denied it 3 times in a row. No way, I didn't. Don't talk nonsense, that the most beautiful woman next to him quickly soothed Shunsui, glaring at the geishas who were struggling not to laugh. Alright, stop denying it and just drink up, Kairaku. As soon as Baiyu Uehara sat down, several beautiful women flocked to him, happily pouring wine and tea. Shunsui looked miserable, but after a few drinks, his mood lifted, the cheerful atmosphere returned. Happy times always fly by. Later, Baiyu, now in a more thoughtful mood, found Shunsui deep in thought. He was alone, without any girls fussing over him. What's bugging you? Baiyu casually put up a soundproof barrier. You still think someone else is behind the hollow incidents? Got any leads? Shunsui answered distractedly, I have a suspect, but it's unlikely since he's still locked up. Then Shunsui changed the subject, keep this to yourself, got it? Don't breathe a word to anyone. Because both their Zanpakuto are illusion-based, reverse caress is highly sensitive to the power of mirror flower, water moon, so when Momo Hinamori discovered that reverse caress had become very active, she was certain Aizen was up to something, but Shunsui only had a hunch, with no actual proof, so, he couldn't do anything about it. That's why Shunsui confided in Baiyu Uehara. Got it, Baiyu shrugged. He knew Aizen would rely on his acting skills to allay Shuansui's suspicions. Then, when the Quincy's invaded, Shunsui set his sights on Tokunada Tsuneyashiro. Baiyu didn't care about Tokunada, that loser boss. However, he was interested in the Tsuneyashiro family's heirloom artifact, the Enreikyo. In the cozy, sake-scented room, Baiyu picked up a glass and drained it. The sake tasted as clean as water, but the aftertaste lingered. Sweet, mellow spirits flowed down his throat and into his stomach. A bottle of this stuff was worth a fortune. Regular folks couldn't afford it. 1 glass would probably incinerate you on the spot. This was a vintage reserved for the elite. Seeing that Baiyu seemed unfazed, Shunsui smiled from beneath his bamboo hat. Hey! Baiyu, got any more ideas? Baiyu immediately understood what Shunsui was getting at and replied. No thanks, I can't stand the nobles, but I'll help when needed. Looks like the good times are coming to an end. It seemed peaceful now, but the Soul Society was never truly at peace, with undercurrents always swirling. Don't sweat it, the old man and I will watch your back. Cheers. Shunsui laughed and raised his glass. In the long years, nothing beat having a close friend. Baiyu muttered, I'll be happy if you don't stab me in the back. The next day, Baiyu stayed put in the first division, playing it safe. He figured Soifong probably had every Mitsukido operative tailing him, so he should lay low for a while. It just so happened that he could complete his daily tasks in the first division barracks. Baiyu Uehara, you're always busy. Later that day, Genshiro Okikiba stared at the abstract painting on the wall of the 1st Division headquarters and his blood pressure spiked again. This painting has high artistic merit. Chojiro Sasakaibe, ever calm, stroked his mustache and admired Baiyu's masterpiece with a smile. How high? Higher than my blood pressure, vice captain of the 2nd Division. We've been friends for ages, so I'm not going to pull any punches here. Look at this horse. It's white and black, tall and strong, with 2 horns. What does that mean? It means it's a cow. Baiyu, strolling through the squad dormitories, suddenly heard someone shout, Chojiro Sasakaibe and Suifong are fighting. Come see. He shook his head. With such a lax management system and unreliable leaders, how can they run the Soul Society properly? Uehara, 7th seat. An old but commanding voice boomed from behind Baiyu. Baiyu flinched and turned around quickly, seeing a bald man with a cane standing before him. This tall old man with closed eyes and a white beard that reached his chest was the captain of the 1st Division, Genryosai Shigekuni Yamamoto. He was also the top of the heap in terms of Shinigami combat power. Facing the big boss, Baiyu didn't dare to slack off and quickly said. Reporting to the captain, after my inspection, the 1st Division barracks are secure and there are no hidden dangers. No, you are the hidden danger. The captain, still with his eyes closed, tapped his cane and ordered. Get out of the barracks and go somewhere else. Come back tonight. No, Captain, I care about the first division, please don't kick me out. Baiyu never thought there'd be a day when he couldn't even work overtime. Seeing the old man was determined to keep him away, Baiyu shrugged and vanished in a flash. After he disappeared, several sneaky figures in black immediately gave chase. However, it only took a few moments for Baiyu to reach the largest bookstore in the Soul Society. He couldn't go to Hanamachi or the 8th Division for the time being, or he'd get blocked. These people would never suspect that his true identity was that of an intellectual who loved learning. Just like that certain Cleopatra who reads books after eating shortbread. Cars. The reason why he stopped thinking was because he suffered from lack of education. If Dio was studious, he would have known that water freezes in a vacuum. Coincidentally, Baiyu spotted Nanao Ise in the study. However, today's Nanao was different. She seemed preoccupied while reading, and was clearly worried. Thinking of the worn-out Shunsui, Baiyu could only sigh that they were indeed uncle and niece, and were very in sync. He stepped forward and asked, "Little Nanao, what's on your mind?" When she saw Baiyu, she thought of the outrageous rumors of the past couple of days and frowned slightly, but she immediately thought of something, and her brows relaxed. "Uehara-kun, could you teach me some Kido? Your talent for Kido is good, but why the sudden rush?" Baiyu knew Nanao's future. She may seem like a girl who graduated from the Shino Academy just 2.5 years ago, but in the future, the Kido barrier she developed alone could even trap Hashwolf, the Sternritter Grandmaster. Therefore, Nanao was able to secure the position of Vice Captain of the 8th Division just by relying on Kido, and not just connections. Chapter 22. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I want to get stronger. I want to contribute to the 8th Division. Nanao Ise declared, her face resolute. Even though Shunsui Kairaku never acknowledged their relationship, blood ties couldn't be denied. Nanao knew he was her only family in the world, and she wanted to repay him for his years of kindness. Just then, Shiroha Uehara got a system notification. Ding. Congratulations, host. Special mission triggered, helping the underdog. Helping the underdog, special mission 8. Given the host's aversion to seeing beautiful girls struggle, a special mission is issued. Help Nanao Ise master lieutenant level Kido within 3 months. Reward, random ability or item. Uehara looked at Nanao, surprised. This girl's a goldmine, 2 special missions triggered in so little time. Is this what they call beginner's luck? That if he wasn't afraid of getting punched, he'd ask Kairaku, how much for the girl with glasses? Nanao, noticing Uehara's blatant, intense gaze, recoiled slightly, but secretly felt a bit pleased. Realizing he was being too forward, Uehara smiled and nodded. Kairaku and I are tight. That makes you like a sister to me. So, your problems are my problems. Nanao, unsure how Uehara had arrived at that logic, still gave him a grateful bow. Thank you, Uehara-kun. That even though she'd never seen him fight, she'd heard tales of his genius for a long time. Besides, anyone praised so highly by her uncle couldn't be weak. Come on. Uehara knew he couldn't slack off with a special mission on the line. They headed to the 8th Division barracks. Uehara picked up on a few faint presences. These people were skilled at hiding, clearly veterans, but not skilled enough to fool him. Right now, teaching Nanao was the priority. Special missions came first, everything else could wait. Once they were at the 8th Division's Kido training grounds, Uehara turned to Nanao, a serious look on his face. If you think I'm going to teach you advanced stuff like forbidden spells, you're going to be disappointed. I'm sticking to the basics. After all, this wasn't the calm, mature lieutenant she'd become. She was just a girl, a little older than a child, bursting with youth and innocence. No matter how much Nanao hoped for it, Uehara wouldn't teach her high-level Kido. It would only hurt her. The spells from 1 to 99 and the binding arts are just a small part of the huge Kido heritage. They were chosen as orthodox Kido because they're effective and stable. The power of spells above number 90 rivals a Bankai, but they're also incredibly dangerous to perform, draining the body and spiritual pressure, and the incantation time is long. They're only practical in the hands of true Kido masters. Nanao wasn't ready for advanced Kido. Learning it now would only slow her progress. I understand. Nanao's voice was quiet, considering the mission. Uehara patiently explained, it's not always true that higher-level Kido is better. It depends on the person. With enough skill, a simple flash of lightning can be deadly. Without it, a forbidden spell is just a pretty firework. You need to understand that the spells from 1 to 99 are just the start of Kido, not the end. The strongest Kido is developing unique spells and barriers tailored to specific enemies and your own abilities. That's where it's at, innovation. It's better to specialize and reach the top than be a jack of all trades. Gotta lay the groundwork. First, that's the path Nanao would eventually take, and it suited her best, but it wasn't a path for everyone. Advanced and unique Kido techniques were secrets passed down in the great noble families. Average Soul Reapers had no chance of learning them. And the special Kido used by the Zero Squad, and the time-space forbidden Kido, were too difficult for even captain-level Soul Reapers. Innovation. Specialize and reach the top. Nanao murmured, a light dawning in her eyes. She suddenly felt like she was growing, like her brain was finally kicking into gear. That simple statement filled her with admiration for Uehara. She became completely focused on learning. When class started, Uehara's lecture had nothing to do with advanced Kido, not even intermediate Kido. Hearing only the basics, Nanao was disappointed, but soon, her face changed to shock. This is basic Kido. I've never heard of it, and I don't even understand it. This was where Uehara's rock-solid foundation paid off. His flash step improved to captain level after fighting Yoruichi Shihoin, partly because Yoruichi was a master and he could learn a lot, but also because of his preparation. All those shadow clones weren't just for show, while other people's foundations were just at ground level, or maybe a little higher. Uehara's was like a skyscraper, like the power of the baseball fist and the quick draw. The power system built on that kind of foundation was a mountain range, unbreakable. Even a genius like Aizen would be impressed by such a solid foundation. That's what Uehara brought to his teaching. At first, Nanao thought Uehara's Kido skills weren't anything special, and he was just pretending to know more than he did, because he was teaching stuff she'd learned ages ago. Nanao had already mastered that, otherwise, she wouldn't have become the chief officer of the 8th Division. At such a young age, but she quickly realized she was wrong. She hadn't mastered it at all, she just thought she had. These were things she'd already learned, but when Uehara taught them, they felt completely new. Nanao felt like she'd seen a new world, like the last few years had been a waste, and everything she'd learned about Kido was wrong. It was the same spells, the same theory, but why the massive gap? Of course, Nanao would be shocked. The basics that Uehara taught seemed the same as what you learned at the academy, but they mixed in secrets from the great noble families and his own unique understanding. As for how Uehara got those secrets, well, can you call it stealing if you're smart? Aizen could see it, but couldn't he? Chapter 23. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Shunsui Kairaku, captain of the 8th Division, watched from his office window, a smile playing on his lips. He was observing Uehara Shiraha and his niece, Nanao Ise, as they practiced their ghost arts. Nanao was diligently taking notes and listening intently. Shiraha would occasionally demonstrate, allowing Nanao to follow his lead. Their progress was swift, a testament to their combined efforts in teaching and learning. Initially, Kairaku had harbored some reservations. He worried that Shiraha's genius might hinder his ability to effectively teach others. Sometimes, exceptional talent can be a disadvantage when teaching, because the teacher struggles to relate to the student's difficulties. However, Kairaku quickly realized his concerns were unfounded. Shiraha's teaching was thorough and consistent, pinpointing and addressing Nanao's foundational weaknesses with remarkable accuracy. Kairaku could recognize these shortcomings, but he couldn't demonstrate them as directly as Shiraha. After their practice, Nanao and Shiraha returned to the team's inner hall. The young woman reverently presented Shiraha with a cup of tea, saying, "Teacher Shiraha, your mastery of ghost arts is truly..." Despite her extensive vocabulary, Nanao struggled to find the right word to describe Shiraha's incredible abilities. Her expression was one of profound admiration. Shiraha smiled at the adoring girl before him. "That's because you're a talented student. I'm lucky to have you. It's nice being admired and served by a beautiful girl." That it was far more enjoyable than plotting and scheming to control Soul Society. he now understood why Aizen had initially groomed Hinamori Momo and then recruited 2 young female subordinates in Hueco Mundo. Aizen knew what he was doing. Shiraha felt himself teetering on the edge of questioning Aizen, understanding Aizen, and becoming Aizen. Determined to master ghost arts, Nanao went above and beyond to please Shiraha, even offering shoulder and leg massages. She viewed Shiraha as her teacher, and these gestures as part of her duties as a disciple. Shiraha considered this special assignment a worthwhile experience. Nanao was guaranteed to learn some real skills. They were a perfect match, one eager to teach, the other eager to learn. After outlining Nanao's next practice steps, Shiraha left the 8th Division barracks. After all the commotion, Shiraha finally made it back to the 1st Division barracks. Meanwhile, in the 5th Division barracks, Aizen stared thoughtfully into the distance. Thinking, Lord Aizen. Ikamaru Jin entered, his signature smile in place. Aizen smiled faintly. It seems quite lively outside. For a 7th seat in the 1st Division, it's quite a stir, Jin observed, his face betraying no emotion. The 7th seat of the 1st Division? Uehara Shiraha. Aizen's interest peaked, and a strange glint flashed in his eyes as he recalled his conversation with Tian Fan. Yes, that's him. Jin confirmed. Lord Aizen, we've established space-based ghost barriers in several Rukongai laboratories as you instructed. However, Otsutsuki Naruto hasn't appeared. It seems he's being cautious. Aizen's lips curved into a smile. I hope he's powerful enough to be less cautious. That would make things more interesting. But for safety's sake, we should expedite the Hueco Mundo laboratory preparations. Captain Aizen, are you planning to move that quickly? Jin was taken aback. The original plan was to fully commit to Hueco Mundo after Aizen became captain. This felt premature. Aizen said softly, deviation from the original plan is also a transcendence of the original plan. Don't worry, everything is under our control. So be patient, Jin. That night, Uehara Shiraha went out again. This time, he wore camouflage glasses and an Abido mask. After all, if he was going to be a hollow, he might as well have a mask. He soon arrived at the secret base. Finding the base empty, especially the hot spring, didn't disappoint him. He resumed his Zanpakuto meditation practice. The Shinigami's Zanpakuto is essentially the fusion of foreign souls, similar to the Gimian Maru, the Zero Squad's food, the Blood Pond Hell, and even hollows. The so-called Asachi are all forged by the sword god Namiya Otsu in the Phoenix Hall. Each Asachi contains a compressed foreign soul. When a Shinigami pours their spiritual energy into the Asachi over time, they merge with this foreign soul, resulting in the Shirkai release. Bankai, on the other hand, is the manifestation of these foreign souls. After years of practice, Shiraha felt he had grasped the foundational power of the Asachi. Kenpachi Zaraki's permanent Shirkai is only seen as such because of the weak's lack of imagination, who believe that it's impossible to kill a captain with a regular form of Zanpakuto. In reality, he killed Oniwajo's younger brother with just the Asachi form and a single slash. Then, armed only with his Asachi and simple horizontal strikes, Kenpachi Zaraki became a powerful captain. As for Ichigo's Zangetsu, it wasn't a Zanpakuto in the traditional sense. Zangetsu's Shirkai was simply a manifestation of power fragments and had nothing to do with a Zanpakuto. So, regardless of past, present, or future, Danku is the only Zanpakuto that can perform the Shirkai permanently. It's a Zanpakuto that transcends the rules of the Shinigami. Chapter 24. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uehara Baiyu was pleased with his progress. He was also about to wrap up another special mission. Things were definitely looking up. Without turning, Uehara Baiyu said, "You that scared of me?" "I don't bite." Shihoin Yoruchi stepped out of the shadows, looking bummed. "How did you find me?" The Onmitsukido and the punishment force were unmatched at assassination and infiltration. They were practically the Shihoin family's private army. Yoruchi had dedicated her life to mastering stealth, assassination, and Shunpa since she was a kid. The fact that she couldn't even get close to him after all those years was a real blow. Uehara Baiyu turned, looking at Yoruchi through the single hole in his mask. This time, Yoruchi wore a purple top and black leggings, highlighting her figure. She didn't exactly look ready for a fight. He shrugged, answering her question. "Ever hear of Scent of a Woman?" Yoruchi looked at the yellow spiral mask. Why the mask all of a sudden? Your eyes are covered, can you see? Just trying to avoid seeing things. Last time, I saw something I shouldn't have. It was a little jarring. Uehara Shiraha's face under the mask was serious. My bad. Shihoin Yoruchi clenched and unclenched her fist, testing the waters. Is that mask some kind of Zanpakuto, too? Yep, it's a powerful magical item with a whole backstory. It belonged to a dog with hereditary pink eye since birth, but he was always cheerful, helping old ladies cross the street, you know. Then, he watched the woman he loved die right in front of him, and his heart just froze, so, he put on a clown mask and decided he was done with love. They say if you collect a Faye's mask, Tom's piano, Vigo's sword, and the horn of Fiangyang, you can summon the Dog King and he'll grant any wish. The Dog King? Shihoin Yoruchi was skeptical. Grant any wish? Sounds like BS. Even though it sounded like nonsense, he had a point, and he spoke so casually. Was any of it true? She couldn't tell. Uehara Bayu walked to the pirate flag, picked it up, and held it up for Shihoin Yoruchi to see. See this flag? Yeah, so. Shihoin Yoruchi said calmly. Gimme money. I'm on the run. No cash. Fine, how about collateral? Some kind of Zanpakuto. Doesn't have to be anything amazing, double strike, would be fine. Shihoin Yoruchi laughed, exasperated. You think, double strike, grows on trees? I'm not head of the family anymore, and even if I were, I couldn't just hand something like that over. Fine, I'll take a loss. Just some random Zanpakuto then, Uehara Bayu said, tossing the pirate flag in the air and catching it. Shihoin Yoruchi perked up. With your power, you don't need Zanpakuto, right? I mean, your Zanpakuto ability is space-based. Uehara Bayu knew she was fishing. He ignored it, throwing the pirate flag on the ground, and smirked. You know, with my abilities I can waltz in and out of the Shihoin mansion, right? If my big sister isn't willing to cooperate, I guess I'll have to talk to her little brother. You wouldn't want your precious Yashiro to wind up looking like me, would you? You're a monster. Shihoin Yoruchi nearly yelled. She'd been sneaking in and out of Soul Society lately to handle family business, mainly protecting her little brother, Yashiro. Otherwise, things would be tough once she was gone. She hadn't even figured out Otsutsuki Naruto, and he'd already found her weak spot. The guy was more mysterious and shameless than Aizen. What had Soul Society done to deserve such a pair of geniuses? Defeated, Shihoin Yoruchi suggested, let's cooperate. If you help us take down Aizen, you can have whatever you want. Cooperate? Uehara Bayu rubbed his chin, pretending to consider it. I want the thing, but I don't want to cooperate. What should I do? I hope you die. Yoruchi Shihoin almost blew a fuse. He was infuriating. Uehara Shiraha smiled. Getting antsy, getting antsy. Yoruchi Shihoin threw a punch, but of course she missed. Looking at the phantom-like Otsutsuki Naruto, she finally calmed down and asked, confused. Why won't you cooperate? It's a win-win. You're not afraid of Aizen, are you? Fear has nothing to do with it. Uehara Bayu said. I'm backing the winner, Shihoin Yoruchi said confidently. Aizen's just a two-faced snake. He can't fool everyone. We'll be back in Soul Society soon. She really believed it. Uehara Bayu nearly laughed. What are you counting on to come back? Will of fire, D's will, dark will, or golden spirit? You still don't get why you lost. You and Aizen aren't playing the same game. You're playing hide and seek. He's playing real-life werewolf. He hasn't wiped you all out because the timing isn't right. He doesn't care about the Soul Society. Otherwise, you'd all be kneeling and calling him Captain Aizen. Uehara Shiraha didn't discount the power of bonds and protection. But people with shoes are scared of people who are barefoot, and people who are staring down the barrel of a gun tend to be honest. Shihoin Yoruchi wasn't discouraged. What's fake is fake. Eventually, the truth will come out. Uehara Bayu chuckled. You're one of the 5 great noble families. Don't you know? The world is a palace built on lies. The 5 great nobles and soul society are built on lies, the truth isn't important. In fact, the 5 great noble families who claimed to be protecting the Soul King were the ones who had ripped the Soul King to shreds back then. What the Zero Squad and the 5 great noble families called protecting the Soul King was actually protecting the Soul King's corpse. That was Soul Society's biggest secret and an absolute taboo. Shihoin Yoruchi's eyes widened. You know about that, too? Your Otsutsuki clan must be one of the oldest families. Her eyes turned cold. So, you're siding with Aizen? Uehara Shiraha shook his head. Not exactly, I'm saying that you and Aizen aren't on the same level, you need someone to lead the charge. Chapter 25. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Inside the secret hideout, Yoruchi Shihoin's lips curled in disgust. She glared at Baiha Uehara. You're the leader you keep talking about. I've never seen such a freeloader. You're trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes. It doesn't have to be me, Baiha shot back, puffing out his chest, but you guys clearly don't have the juice, so someone's gotta step up. Yoruchi's patience finally snapped. She planted her hands on her hips. So, you just want a cut of the action for doing nothing? And you're thinking you can use me as bait to distract Aizen? Baiha had been skeptical of their so-called cooperation from the start. Even a stand-up guy like Ichigo Kurosaki got played by Kisuke Uehara and Yoruchi. He figured they'd be even more ruthless with him. Anyone who's seen Bleach knows the drill. When you see Uehara and Aizen, just throw hands. Don't listen to a word they say, or you'll end up 6 feet under before you know it. Those two are so twisted and conniving, if you dropped a marble in their brain, it'd take a year to roll out. Baiha wasn't about to become some human pretzel. He wasn't interested in their mind games. Tough luck, he thought. Yoruchi, frustrated, finally said, you can't seriously expect something for nothing, can you? The whole cooperation thing was just a smokescreen, they just wanted to keep tabs on this Otsutsuki Naruto. It was a desperation play. At least with Aizen's illusions, there were clues you could follow. This Otsutsuki Naruto was a complete enigma, identity and abilities unknown, like a freaking ghost. Aizen was already a handful. Throw in this mysterious Otsutsuki Naruto, and they were totally screwed, Baiha said confidently. Exactly. Since I'm not doing anything, you should give it to me. I could just take it, you know. Yoruchi was about ready to throw a punch, but she swallowed her pride and went for plan B. Fine. If we can't cooperate, let's just exchange resources. I'll give you the magical artifact, and you give us intel. Deal? That she was in a tight spot and had to play ball. Never in a million years did she imagine that she, head of the Shihoin clan and captain of the 2nd division, would have to compromise like this. Baiha figured the time was right, so he made a counteroffer. I'll give you an even better deal. Not only will I not touch your brother, I'll protect him if anything goes down. Done. Yoruchi agreed without hesitation. Sure, Yashiro was probably safe in their mansion on the Noble Street, but Yoruchi knew how messed up the nobles of Suriidai were. She was always a little worried. An extra layer of protection was just good insurance. Baiha clapped his hands. We have a deal. Congrats on making the right choice. It was like finding free money on the ground. He wasn't about to pass it up. He knew Yoruchi and Uehara were just trying to buy time with him, but Baiha didn't care. Yoruchi reluctantly handed over the magical artifact she'd been saving, then bolted. She was afraid she'd lose it if she stayed any longer. Who can stand being ripped off and then ridiculed? Baiha relaxed in the hot spring. He glanced at the artifact, then tossed it into his dimension where it could slowly merge with the death gloves. The artifact was probably trash, the bottom of the barrel, but he didn't need anything fancy right now. If it was too powerful, the death gloves couldn't absorb it, and this was just the beginning. As the 7th seed of the 1st division, there was no point in making waves. He'd just chill and slack off. Otsutsuki Naruto couldn't go to waste. Time to crank up the heat on Uehara, Yoruchi, and Aizen. That way, he could play all sides. At the very least, he'd have Yashiro to fall back on for the rest of his life. The next morning, Baiha hit the ground running and knocked out his daily tasks. The show off your singing voice task was a piece of cake. He just belted out a tune, and boom, done. He even got cheers from the First Division barracks. Baiha put his hand on his chest, tipped his hat, and gave a gentleman's bow, which made the girls scream even louder. After tackling so many daily tasks, Baiha was a master of piano, chess, calligraphy, painting, storytelling, scholarship, and singing. He was basically a Renaissance man. Lots of Soul Society's female Shinigami were starting to crush on him, drawn to his looks and then hooked by his talent. That's why Baiha was considered worth saving on the Female Shinigami Association's Don't Let Him Die list, while Shunsui Kairaku was on the Public Enemy list. After snagging the Kido +1 and Shadow Clone Proficiency +1 reward, Baiha headed to the 8th Division's barracks. The lovely Nanao Ise had been waiting anxiously for days, whipping up a delicious breakfast. Baiha took a bite and nodded to the nervous Nanao. "It's perfect. You're very attentive." She visibly relaxed and said, "Teacher Uehara, I'll keep practicing Kido and cooking until I get it right." "Atta girl. That's the spirit." Baiha dug into Nanao's home-cooked breakfast. Meanwhile, in the 8th Division office, Kairaku saw the whole thing and suddenly his medicinal broth tasted extra bitter. He'd been working himself to the bone lately. His back was killing him, so he had to take care of himself. Sometimes, Kairaku was jealous of Baiha's iron constitution and popularity. He suddenly had a bad feeling that Nanao was about to give it up at warp speed. Did he just let a wolf into the henhouse? Well, if it was Baiha Uehara, it wasn't outside the realm of possibility. Over at the 8th Division's Kido training grounds, Nanao chanted earnestly. "O Sovereign! Mask of flesh and blood, O one who is all things! Fluttering wings! Crowned with the name of man! Scorching heat and strife, rolling back to the south across the sea, marching forward! Hado number 31, red fire cannon." Then, she swung her arm. As her spiritual pressure gathered, a roaring column of fire erupted from her hand, slamming into the target and obliterating it. Nanao was stunned. Only high-ranking officers can break that target, but just the other day, I couldn't even make a dent. She stared at her hands, unable to believe she'd cast that spell. In just one night, her power had skyrocketed. Nanao spun around and gave Baiha a grateful look. "Thank you so much for your guidance, Teacher Uehara. I never could have made such progress without you." Nanao was practically crying tears of joy. Baiha shook his head. "A high-ranking officer? That's kid stuff. Get it together." That the girl's eyes lit up with admiration. Chapter 26. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If anyone else said that, Ise Nanao would call them arrogant, but coming from Uehara Shiraha, it just sounded right. For one, Uehara Shiraha was notorious for goofing off in the Soul Society, but he was also a well-known genius, powerful and versatile. More importantly, Ise Nanao had personally witnessed Uehara Shiraha's incredible teaching skills and his mastery of the arcane arts. Seeing the admiration in Ise Nanao's eyes, Uehara Shiraha smiled slightly. If this were a dating sim, I'd be racking up points right now. The two then resumed their studies from the previous day. After some practice, Ise Nanao's skill with arcane arts had improved significantly, and her admiration for Uehara Shiraha had only grown. Uehara Shiraha was also pleased with Ise Nanao's progress. At this rate, the special task would be a piece of cake. The thought of unlocking new abilities or items put him in an even better mood. Once this special mission was complete, the war between the Soul Society and Hueco Mundo would probably kick off soon. Uehara Shiraha would have to pull his weight, of course. After all, the old guard in the First Division had been tolerating him for a while now. They probably wanted to use this as an opportunity to test him. Uehara Shiraha wasn't worried. That night, he headed to the pleasure district to unwind. "Master Baiyu, you haven't been around lately." A courtesan named Matsuko greeted him with a sweet, contented smile. This kind of warmth and affection was reserved just for Uehara Baiyu. Matsuko had been with Uehara Baiyu since day one and had become his personal favorite. The two shared tea and sake, savoring each sip. They chatted occasionally, and Matsuko's beautiful face shone under the lamplight. Uehara Baiyu enjoyed the atmosphere. He wasn't keen on fighting and killing, and definitely wouldn't let anyone fight and kill him. As he relaxed, Uehara expression changed, and he listened intently. He could hear a maid trying to hold someone back outside, along with a rude voice. I'm a guard from the Tsuneyashiro family. Why should some geisha give me attitude? I've never even heard of the 7th seat of the 1st division. These soul reapers are just lapdogs. Hearing this, Uehara smiled at Matsuko and said, keep my drink warm. I'll be right back. He stood up, opened the door, and stepped outside. The Tsuneyashiro family's soul reaper was drawing his sword to intimidate the two maids. The maids in the pleasure district weren't defenseless, and they often doubled as security, which is why they tried stopping him. As the lapdog of a great noble, this soul reaper was used to throwing his weight around, and he drew his sword without hesitation. Uehara quickly sized up the situation. Aside from the 2 diligent squad sentries, there were no other soul reapers present. Confirming that this wasn't a trap, Uehara drew his sword and shouted, who's the maniac drawing a sword against the 7th seat of the 1st division? Stop him! Before the Tsuneyashiro family's soul reaper could react, an extremely cold force engulfed him, freezing him into an ice cube. Uehara deliberately overdid it. Even if the Tsuneyashiro family's soul reaper survived, he'd be a vegetable. The 2 squad scouts sent by Soifang, who were hiding in the shadows, watched in stunned silence. What were they supposed to do? Continue tracking him or take him down? They were pretty sure they couldn't win. While they were still debating, Uehara stepped over to them and yelled, "There are accomplices. Who are you? How dare you plot to kill the 7th seat?" He attacked without hesitation, activating White Album, his stand, and 2 more ice sculptures appeared on the ground, but this time, he held back. It wasn't to spare Soifang, but rather to avoid ticking off 2 powerful noble families at once. Otherwise, Captain General Yamamoto would have to go to extra lengths to protect him, and he'd be the one catching flack. Having dealt with the situation, Uehara swaggered back inside and resumed his drink, still warm. Not bad. Matsuko, who had been pale with fear, now smiled at him with admiration. Brother I may have caused you trouble. Soon after, Kairaku Shunsui arrived to clean up the mess and apologize. Over the centuries, I've made trouble for the Tsuneyashiro family, leading to deep conflicts with them. You're my friend, so it's inevitable that they'd hold a grudge against you. Lately, the Tsuneyashiro family has been getting aggressive, so you need to be careful. Of the 5 noble families, the one guarding hell had essentially retreated from the Soul Society. The Shiba family had exiled themselves to Rukongai, far from the center of power. The Kuchiki family stuck to the rules of the 6th division. The Shihuin family was doing alright until Yoruchi defected, causing an inevitable decline, which is why the Tsuneyashiro family became the biggest beneficiary. Recently, the Tsuneyashiro family had been expanding like crazy, and their arrogance was off the charts. This provocation against Uehara Shiraha was actually a test of the Godii 13. The nobles and the Godii 13 were 2 separate systems, with the nobles still the nominal rulers of the Godii 13, so Kairaku Shunsui couldn't do much about them. Uehara Shiraha remained unconcerned. Brother Kairaku, you're too kind. With our friendship, there's no need to worry about being implicated. I don't look for trouble, but I don't back down from it either, even if they have a powerful background. I have the Captain General to back me up. This is really an unprovoked disaster. Kairaku Shunsui, born into an upper-class noble family and captain of the 8th division, was good at preying on the weak. So they're thinking of picking on the weak. How convenient. Uehara Shiraha had been thinking about making a move on the Tsuneyashiro family, but before he could act, they came to him first. Hearing Uehara Shiraha's words, Kairaku Shunsui chuckled. That's you all right. In the end, the matter was left unresolved. The Tsuneyashiro family, or any of the Soul Society nobles, didn't have the guts to go against Captain General Yamamoto. The old nobles knew exactly what kind of ruthless character the first generation of the Godii 13 was. 1,000 years ago, they were just surprised that Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, who always abided by the rules, would protect this kid. Who on earth is this Uehara Shiraha? Not only is he so audacious, but he's also treated differently by old man Yamamoto. Soifang was the angriest of all. She looked at her 2 subordinates, who had just recovered, and shouted. You're supposed to be the elite of the squad, but you were captured so easily. You're a disgrace to the squad. In her heart, she wanted to send Uehara straight to the maggot's nest, but since the captain had spoken, she had no choice but to obey. Chapter 27. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As night fell, Uehara Shiraha left a shadow clone as a decoy and quietly headed toward Siriidi's noble district, located east of the 6th Division barracks, almost in the heart of Siriidi. Noble district's central area was lined with opulent mansions, exclusive medical facilities, and high-end restaurants for the nobility, unless you were a noble or had special permission. Even a captain-level Shinigami couldn't set foot there. You could try sneaking in through the sewers, but Uehara Shiraha, with his hollow abilities, had better options. The defenses around Noble District weren't quite as intense as those protecting the path to the Soul King's palace, but they were still considerable. He noticed several invisible barriers and obstacles made of spirit-infused stones along the way. Breaking through those wouldn't be easy, even for a typical captain-level Shinigami, but in his hollow state, these obstacles were non-existent. As he walked, he wondered if a Marauder's map-type item for the Soul Society would reveal all the juicy secrets. On the surface, the Soul Society seemed peaceful, but it was teeming with hidden dangers, lurking schemers, and monsters of all kinds who came out to play at night. There was Aizen, always tinkering with his experiments, a doting sister looking out for her brother, Kuratsuchi Mayuri, obsessing over his test subjects, Zaraki Fuya, secretly observing everything, and Tsuneyashiro Tokunada, plotting to burn it all down. Each possessed unique and dangerous skills, but none of them could match his hollow powers. With an easy journey, Uehara Shiraha soon arrived in the heart of Noble District. Mansions were everywhere. One in particular screamed nouveau riche, with a nameplate bearing the name Omida. This had to be the Omida family mansion, famous for their wealth, but not their scruples. Former god Omida Kichiyo was just a vice-captain, but he could easily buy a gem mine. However, Omida Kichiyo hadn't yet taken his position as vice-captain of the 2nd Division and captain of the Secret Mobile Corps. His father, Omida Kishin, had only recently retired and was still in the handover phase. Omida Kishin and some of his old guard were likely stationed near the Shihoin family mansion, just in case. Uehara Shiraha detected several spiritual pressures there. Since Shifenjuin Yoruchi's defection, other forces had their eyes on that valuable territory. These nobles, much like that nation, had completely embraced rigid social hierarchies. But the lower class rebelling against the upper class was also part of their tradition. The 5 noble families' power came from betraying the Soul King. After all, if you thought following the rules would keep you safe, you were dead wrong. The 5 families were far from united, constantly scheming and fighting amongst themselves. Thinking of this, Uehara looked up and saw an incredibly extravagant building. This mansion dwarfed the others nearby. Its roof was massive and ornate. Soul Society's architecture was generally inspired by the Heian period, simple, nature-integrated. 4-cornered buildings with grey walls and red-tiled roofs, rarely exceeding 3 stories. Even the noble mansions on Noble Street followed this pattern. Byakuya Kachiki's silver-white windflower shawl was worth 10 buildings. But his mansion was relatively modest, unlike the one before him, which seemed to declare itself ruler of the district. This was the Tsuneyashiro family mansion. The first family to betray the Soul King. They had gone all the way, dismembering him. Flaunting your arrogance. You're asking for it. Uehara Shiraha mentally sentenced the Tsuneyashiro family to death. The noble's extravagance disgusted him. One district hoarding 99% of the Soul Society's wealth and resources. It was outrageous. Uehara Shiraha decided to personally address this vast disparity in wealth. He wanted to deliver justice to the people of the Soul Society. Besides, it was possible that Tsuneyashiro family had already targeted him and were plotting against him. That was a death sentence on its own. Time was short, so Uehara Shiraha sent his shadow clone to randomly select a lucky person. The next day, news spread like wildfire through Noble District, causing an uproar among the great noble families. Last night, Tsuneyashiro Kamagawa, a member of the head family, was murdered, with only secret mobile core markings found at the scene. Tsuneyashiro Kamagawa was known for his cruelty, having committed all sorts of atrocities and taken many lives, but for the Tsuneyashiro family, the lives of a few commoners meant nothing. Who cared if an ant died? The Tsuneyashiro family, who saw themselves as the head of the 5 great noble families, looked down on Shinigami, commoners, and even lower-ranking nobles. Shinigami could die at will, commoners could die at will, but a member of the noble Tsuneyashiro family couldn't die in vain. This was a provocation. A disgrace. The Tsuneyashiro family immediately pressured the 46th chamber. Generally, internal affairs of the 5 great noble families and major decisions concerning the Soul Society were decided by the Gold Seal Noble Council. The Gold Seal Council of Nobles was a subordinate meeting body of the 5 great noble families, outranking the Central 46th Chamber. The Central 46th Chamber primarily handled matters related to the Godiai 13 and daily management of the Soul Society. Drafting rules and regulations, however, implementing policies required cooperation from the Godiai 13 and the Secret Mobile Corps, so, in the end, the matter landed on Captain Commander Yamamoto's desk. The old man, cane in hand, eyes closed, asked, "Last night, a member of the Tsuneyashiro family was killed, and Secret Mobile Corps markings were found at the scene. What is the meaning of this?" That while the Secret Mobile Corps was nominally part of the 2nd Division, control was actually in the hands of several nobles. The Secret Mobile Corps served as a buffer, preventing direct conflict between Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni and the nobles. This kept both sides happy. However, with Shifenjuin Yaruchi's escape from Soul Society, things had changed. "I don't know, Captain Commander." Soifong replied, confused. Was the Shihoin family feuding with the Tsuneyashiro family? She hadn't heard anything about it. Soifong felt like things had gone downhill since she met Uehara Hakuha. Not long ago, Uehara Hakuha accused 2 members of the Secret Mobile Corps of being accomplices to thieves and then froze them to death. The matter hadn't been resolved, and Uehara Hakuha hadn't received any punishment. The Secret Mobile Corps, and she, the newly appointed commander, had become the laughingstock of the Soul Society. Soifong was already furious, and now this. It was too much. Chapter 28. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You're the commander of the Shing army, aren't you? Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni frowned. After a pause, he continued, "This happened on Noble Street, meaning the Godiai 13 can't directly interfere. We need to investigate this ASAP. Because the Shing army and the Shihoin family are so closely tied, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni didn't want to get caught in the crossfire of the noble clan's power plays. He just wanted to get this over with quickly." "Yes, sir." Soifong responded respectfully. Rules and orders were paramount to her. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, as if struck by a sudden thought, added, "Also, you should be aware of the Hueco Mundo strategic deployment. Get the Shing army prepped. We'll need you to gather intel and relay messages. I won't let you down, Captain." A wave of responsibility washed over Soifong. She resolved to knock it out of the park and impress everyone. Within days, almost every senior Shinigami knew about the murder of the Tsuneyashiro family's main members. An assassination of a noble family member was unprecedented. Aizen and the other master manipulators took notice, tossing around their own theories. The Tsuneyashiro family, though not openly feuding with the Shihoin clan, was covertly undermining their influence. With the family head branded a traitor, the Shihoin family could only sit back and take the punches. During the investigation, Soifong's team found nothing at the scene beyond a conspicuous Shing army armband. She had some hunches, but couldn't voice them outright. Subsequently, the Tsuneyashiro family used the Shing army's supposed inadequacy as justification to clip their wings. In their eyes, a stronger Shing army meant a stronger Shihoin family. So, even though the Shing army served them, the Tsuneyashiro clan didn't hesitate to weaken them. This bizarre murder case ratcheted up the tension simmering in Soul Society. Meanwhile, at the 8th Division training grounds, Uehara Shiraha calmly tutored Ise Nanao in the art of the Heido. He said with a relaxed tone, "Don't hold back. Unleash your most powerful Heido on me. It's the only way for me to pinpoint your weaknesses." Having a sharp and attentive student like her was a breeze. With just a few pointers, Ise Nanao's Heido skills had improved dramatically. At this rate, he'd finish the 3-month assignment in a month, tops. Heido number 58, Tenran. Spiritual pressure coalesced instantly, and the Heido took shape. She raised her palm, aiming the destructive spell at Uehara Shiraha's right shoulder. A violent gust of wind hurtled toward him. Despite the force of the intermediate Hado, Uehara Shiraha didn't budge an inch. With a slight pulse of spiritual pressure, he casually swatted the hurricane away, reducing it to nothing. Nanao felt an oppressive weight bearing down on her. The air around her seemed to turn to stone, making it hard to breathe. But then, the suffocating sensation lifted. She looked up and saw that Uehara Shiraha had effortlessly neutralized her best shot. She couldn't help feeling defeated, painfully aware of her own limitations. Despite all her progress, why did she still feel so weak? Sensing her disappointment, Uehara Shiraha smiled gently. Don't get discouraged. Your Hado is already at the top officer level. Break through that ceiling, and you'll be at vice captain level in no time. Vice captain level? Nanao was flabbergasted. Sensei Uehara, how is that even possible? That just a day ago, her Hado barely scraped the bottom of the officer ranking. After a single day of Uehara Shiraha's instruction, she was already at the high end of that group. And now, just a few days later, he was saying she could reach the vice captain level. It seemed too good to be true. Uehara Shiraha chuckled at her astonished expression. Anything is possible. And vice captain is only the beginning. Yes, Sensei Uehara. Even if Nanao doubted herself, she'd never question Uehara Shiraha. Uehara Shiraha nodded, satisfied with her growing confidence. The vice captain level isn't really that hard. You need a solid foundation, enough spiritual pressure. And you need your own conviction, a firm sense of purpose. The power system of the Shinigami was driven by belief. A Zanpakuto without conviction was worthless, unable to cut anything. This conviction resonated in spiritual pressure, amplifying its strength. An average officer was like a baby to Uehara Shiraha, no threat at all. Their power was a blank slate. A vice captain, though still no match for him, had at least developed some skill and substance. Nanao absorbed his words, gaining a deeper understanding. Just then, Kairaku Shunsui, who had been waiting patiently, emerged with a smile. He nodded to Uehara Shiraha. Brother Shiraha, can we talk? Uehara Shiraha smiled back and followed him out. They strolled into the courtyard, settling on the grassy lawn. Kairaku Shunsui said with a grin, Brother Shiraha, thanks for looking after Nanao. But honestly, I'm blown away. Your strength and teaching ability are incredible. Her Hado has surpassed the elite officers in a matter of days. It's unbelievable. Unlike the scheming Aizen, Uehara Shiraha had always been honest about holding back with Kairaku Shunsui and others. Because of this, the three captains of the First Division and Kairaku Shunsui knew that Uehara Shiraha's strength was far beyond his current rank. Kairaku Shunsui had guessed that Uehara Shiraha's true power might be around the vice-captain level. But today, he realized how wrong he was. He had underestimated him. The vice-captain level was nothing to Uehara Shiraha, not even a challenge. Chapter 29. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Nah, it was a piece of cake. Uehara Shiraha responded politely to Kairaku Shuansui's heartfelt thanks. He didn't really mind showing off his powerful spiritual pressure and strong Zankinkizo to Kairaku Shunsui and the others. His real trump cards were the mission system and Dankong, and teaching Nanao Kido. A total piece of cake. Completing that special mission was the real goal. Kairaku Shunsui adjusted his bamboo hat, his expression unusually serious in the shadows. For you, sure, it's a piece of cake, he said. But for me, for that girl, it means the world. Ever since Lisa's incident, I've been eaten up with regret. I was too careless. I shouldn't have let her go on that mission. I'm afraid Nanao will face something similar, and Nanao can't even use her Zanpakuto. Knowing you're teaching her puts my mind at ease. Hey, brother Kairaku, you're way too kind. Lisa's situation wasn't your fault. Uehara Shiraha smiled. Don't worry about a thing from now on. As her teacher, I'll definitely protect Nanao. Just leave her to me, okay? The The smile on Kairaku Shuinsue's face faltered, and he tightened his grip on Kaden Kyukatsu. Putting the joking aside, Kairaku Shunsui got to the serious matter. You know what happened at the Tsuneyashiro estate, right? If a tragedy like that happened to someone else, he'd be furious and investigate. But when it came to scum like that, Kairaku Shunsui would just have another drink. Something that big? Of course, I know. What's up? How could Uehara Shiraha not know? He was the one who made it happen, Kairaku Shunsui grinned. The 46th Division isn't thrilled with Soifang's leadership, so they're having the 1st Division monitor things, see if there's room for improvement. The old man's passing the buck, the task, to you, that way you can see that girlfriend of yours. Aren't you touched? Not really. Uehara Shiraha looked at the gloating Kairaku Shunsui, sighing. Everyone knows there's a little misunderstanding between me and Captain Soifang, but he still wants me to go. The old man's doing this on purpose. He just fished for a few days and got a few bottles of wine out of him. Talk about stingy. Those are treasured collectibles. I haven't even had a sip. Can I put in an order for a few bottles? Kairaku Shunsui retorted immediately, then reminded him. You still need to be serious about the 2nd Division. We've got a big move coming up, and we need the stealth forces' cooperation. Kairaku Shunsui had no doubts about Uehara Shiraha's capabilities. Before, he was worried his little brother might be embarrassed by the stealth force. Now, with Uehara Shiraha's strength, it wasn't clear who would be embarrassing whom. Conquer Hueco Mundo, right? It's about time, or all the hollows will be coming to Soul Society for a party. Uehara Shiraha knew hollow activity had been ramping up lately, both in the real world and in Rukongai. Without a strong offensive, they wouldn't make it to the new year. He'd already made plenty of preparations, plus, the reward for the special mission would be coming soon, so he wasn't sweating it. As for the 2nd Division, Soifang was no big deal. After all, Old Man Yama and Kairaku were there to handle things. He wasn't afraid of offending the nobles at all. Even if he really managed to piss them off beyond repair, he could always run to the real world to have some fun. No biggie. Then, the two discussed some strategic aspects of the Hueco Mundo operation. The move this big required close collaboration between all the squads and the full support of the Kido Corps. While the chief and deputy head of the Kido Corps were away, Mayuri Kuratsuchi had taken the chance to recruit many of its best members, basically poaching from the nobles. Just like someone who had studied at Worm's Nest, his mind is active. Uehara Shiraha threw in a few opinions. He had read the script, which was like having full picture vision, so his insights were naturally extraordinary. He'd get straight to the point in just a few words, and Kairaku Shunsui kept nodding, calling it awesome. As night fell, Kairaku Shunsui and Uehara Shiraha went to the red light district, arm in arm, for another night of wining and dining. At the Hanamachi Tavern, Uehara Shiraha's spiritual pressure surged, and his eyes cleared. Strong spiritual pressure was useful. He could sober up just by circulating his spiritual power. If that didn't work, he still had the horse charm. As for Kairaku Shunsui, who didn't want to sober up, it was because wine doesn't make people drunk, people get drunk by themselves. He was just chasing that buzzed feeling. Uehara Shiraha liked the atmosphere but didn't want to be in a daze all the time. Then, Uehara Shiraha used flash step and went back to his squad barracks. After using the horse charm to scan again, Uehara Shiraha dismissed all of his shadow clones, one by one. After absorbing and digesting, his strength had steadily increased. After thinking about it, Uehara Shiraha left a shadow clone in the barracks. His real self took advantage of the darkness to head toward the secret base under the double-killing hill. This time, Uehara Shiraha only wore his camouflage glasses, no mask. After all, he wasn't Ma Zfake man, and seeing things alone while wearing a mask felt a bit awkward. Otsutsuki Naruto, you killed Tsuneyashiro Kamagawa, didn't you? As soon as he arrived at the secret base, Yoruchi Shihuin, who had been waiting, demanded. She still controlled the stealth force, so she didn't believe they were responsible, and even if she took action, it wouldn't have been that easy. After all, the nobles' barriers and defenses weren't for show, and those guys were more afraid of death than anyone. The only ones who could have pulled it off were Otsutsuki Naruto and Aizen. Uehara Shiraha pulled a chair out of thin air and sprawled out, saying lazily. Last I heard, your family and the Tsunoyashiro family didn't exactly get along. Tsunoyashiro Kamagawa's death shouldn't bother you, so why the fuss? Seeing that Otsutsuki Naruto didn't deny it, Yoruichi Shihuin's eyes narrowed. Why would you attack the nobles? Generally, Shinigami don't attack nobles. It's a completely thankless task. Didn't you ask me to? Uehara Shiraha feigned confusion, Yoruichi Shihuin scoffed. When did I ever ask you to do that? Since when did you become so obedient? Didn't you ask me to protect Yashiro? And you gave me a magic weapon, Uehara Shiraha said seriously. I figured the best defense is a good offense, so I killed that Tsunoyashiro family bastard. Kill 1 to warn 100, you know. That way, others will think twice before messing with your Shihuin family. But this breaks the rules, Yoruichi Shihuin said, her expression serious. The great noble families had a tacit agreement, no matter how fierce their internal fighting, they wouldn't attack noble family members. It didn't matter if Shinigami, guards, and warriors died, but the nobles, especially the 5 great noble families, were off-limits. Uehara Shiraha shrugged. Who made the rules? Did anyone ask me? Your rules can't restrict me, and they can't protect you either. These nobles were always talking about rules because they had no real power of their own. Rules were all that protected them. Uehara Shiraha wasn't infected with the will of fire and didn't have the habit of raising a father. The nobles needed to fabricate false charges to kill people. Uehara Shiraha didn't. He just thought that Tsunoyashiro family might be secretly plotting against him, so he crushed a member of the Tsunoyashiro family like a bug. Insects, dead are dead. Chapter 30. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You're something else. It wasn't like Yoruichi Shihuin hadn't encountered reckless individuals before. Leading the Onmitsukido, she'd seen all kinds of dangerous characters, but this guy wasn't just reckless, he was incredibly capable. Outlaws are one thing, you catch them and lock them up. But what do you do with a lunatic like this? Shihuin Yoruichi frowned, seeing no easy way out. Then why the hell did you leave the Shing army symbol? Now everyone thinks my family's involved. Tsunoyashiro Kamagawa's death would have been bad enough, but the timing was terrible. The Tsunoyashiro clan had been subtly undermining the Shihuin family for ages. Now, one of them turns up dead with an Onmitsukido symbol nearby. The Shihuin family and the Onmitsukido are closely linked. Yoruichi didn't want her family taking the blame for something they didn't do. Because I want them to think that way. Why else would I leave the symbol? Boredom. Uehara Baiyu said, like it was obvious. If it wasn't connected to you, it wouldn't be nearly as effective. Besides, it's sort of connected. You made the weapon, and I killed the guy. Uehara Baiyu was the kind of guy who just didn't give a damn about the fallout. He killed who he wanted, did what he wanted, and let the noble families sort out the mess. In fact, he'd be happy if they all croaked and he could divide up the inheritance. Besides, Otsutsuki Naruto did the deed. What did he, Uehara Baiyu, have to do with it? You. Yoruichi Shihuin nearly choked. Related? She hadn't wanted to kill anyone. Unrelated? Good luck convincing anyone of that. After all, Otsutsuki Naruto had no beef with the Tsunoyashiro family. He did it for the Shihuin family, even knowing it wasn't true. She couldn't explain it, just like she couldn't explain her defection. Yoruichi Shihuin had a pounding headache. Every time she dealt with this Otsutsuki Naruto, her plans went haywire and her thoughts went sideways. But she was stuck with it. Seeing Yoruichi's frown, Uehara Baiyu comforted her. Would it make you feel better if I said I just did it for kicks, and the Shihuin family wasn't my target, and I just wanted to have some fun? Are you kidding me? You bastard, hold still and let me punch you. The comfort was the last straw. Shihuin Yoruichi exploded. She threw a punch and stopped, surprised. She hit him. He didn't use his weird powers. Yoruichi Shihuin didn't dwell on it. She unleashed a flurry of Shunpa strikes, concentrating her spiritual pressure, directly penetrating his spiritual defenses, but every time she connected, his form would disappear and reappear, making him a little harder to hit each time. Shihoin Yoruchi was getting serious. She was venting her frustration while gathering information. Yoruchi Shihoin locked into a heated battle with him. Half a day later, Uehara Baiyu looked at the refreshed and revitalized Shihoin Yoruchi and offered, "Want to hit the hot springs before you go?" "I don't mind." "Pass," Shihoin Yoruchi said, waving her hand. She vanished in a flash. "Shihoin Yoruchi, you're a hell of a tool," Uehara Baiyu murmured in the hot spring, glancing at the vice-captain level Hakuda's skill on his panel. A smile tugged at his lips. He'd leveled up his Hakuda and learned some very useful techniques, and he'd strengthened his relationship with Yoruchi. 2 birds, 1 stone. Tomorrow, he could play with little soy fawn under the guise of inspecting the Onmitsukido. Life was good, and even this base seemed more appealing. All thanks to Tsuneyashiro Kamagawa's sacrifice. Thanks, Tsuneyashiro Kamagawa. The next morning, Uehara Baiyu checked his daily tasks as usual. Plant a tree, daily task. Today is Arbor Day. Please plant a tree. Protecting the environment is everyone's responsibility. Reward, random attribute points *2, Uehara Baiyu didn't mess around. He planted a loquat tree facing the captain's office. Hopefully, it would still be there during the 1,000-year blood war. After patting the soil off his hands, Uehara Baiyu got a system notification. Ding. Congratulations on completing the daily task. Plant a tree, and get the rewards Shadow Clone +1, Sun Breathing +1. Nice. Uehara Baiyu nodded, satisfied. The higher the skill level and the stronger the spiritual pressure, the harder it was to improve. 2 attribute points a day weren't much, but it was real progress. He found the rhythm of slowly becoming invincible and gaining real growth every day very satisfying. In the 2nd Division barracks, Uehara Baiyu met Soy Fan, whose face was delicate but whose expression was ice cold. For Soy Fan, the past few days had been hell. First, she was abandoned by Yoruchi, and she vowed to surpass her and make her regret it. Then, the Onmitsukido had been in her hands for only a few days when mistakes started piling up, and her authority was being undermined. It was embarrassing and infuriating. But worse, the inspector today was Uehara Baiyu. There was no way Soy Fan was going to treat him well. "Captain Soy Fan, my condolences," Uehara Baiyu said gently. Soy Fan replied coldly, "What are you talking about? No one died. Why so gloomy?" Uehara Baiyu asked, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Soy Fan glared at Uehara Baiyu, wondering whether to attack him outright or admire his nerve. She gritted her teeth and said, "If I hadn't been busy lately, would you have survived this long? If you dare attack Xing Jun again, you won't escape punishment." Soy Fan still didn't understand why the captain commander valued this kid so much. Was it just because he was younger, more talented, had a more powerful Zanpakuto, and was more handsome? "Well, you're right." Uehara Baiyu nodded. "Tell me about the Onmitsukido's current situation. I'd like to see how he can keep dodging sanctions." "You." Soy Fan clenched her fists, then released them and dutifully outlined the Onmitsukido's current state.